Okay, let's start. Hello, welcome to Irish Football Fan TV. This is the Irish Abroad Show. It's myself, Paul Nealon, and I am joined by Adam Courtney, and we're here to discuss all the latest from Irish football this week. Adam, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. Chelsea won for the first time in what seems like about 2 years, but then Bows lost, so bit of a bittersweet weekend. I'm sure you are happy with that Shells game. How's things with you?
All good. It's been a pretty good week in terms of football. Shells beat Bows, as you mentioned. Just sort of rub that in there a little bit. And then, my team won yesterday. We won 7-1, and Everton drew, so they didn't lose. So they didn't ruin my weekend. Probably should have won, but they didn't lose. So, yeah, pretty good weekend. Obviously, Seamus Coleman played in that game, and we'll be talking about him at some point, I'm sure. But, yeah, we'll get straight into it. There was games during the week. And a man who we've been speaking about in recent weeks a lot is Evan Ferguson. He got on the score sheet again, scored the winner in a game between Brighton and Stoke in the FA Cup. And then Sammy Smuddox also got a very important goal in a game against Leicester in the FA Cup to win against Leicester as well. So two big Irish goals, or two big Irish goal scores. And obviously Gavin Houlihan there as well, who got on the score sheet as well. Two penalties against Southampton too. So a lot of good Irish goals in the FA Cup, and then just in League One, then David McGoldrick got an assist, and Joe Doherty got an assist as well in League One, and he got on the score sheet as well, David McGoldrick, and so did Danny Mandrow. So yeah, pretty good week. But in terms of the FA Cup, obviously good to see some of the lads there get on the score sheet. What were your thoughts when you saw some of those results?
Yeah, well, obviously the Brighton one is probably the main one. I think Evan Ferguson is the player that every Irish person has their eyes on the last few months since he kind of broke onto the scene. But it's great to see him back, because I think people were worried that obviously he got that injury from tackle from Fabinho, that he'd end up then, being injured for long term. Then when you find out that it's only a few weeks, you're hoping, is he going to come back and is that going to ruin his rhythm, and is he going to kind of fall a bit out of the team then? But he seems to be straight back in. Like De Zerbi, the manager of Brighton, really seems to trust him, and he's kind of hanging his hat on him now. Like, to have someone who's only recently gone 18 to be starting for as your striker in the Premier League, and then obviously he's bringing you through these big cup ties into a quarter final now, and like, you've obviously got a few good teams in there. Think Fulham, Burnley, obviously then United and City. But like, you'd have to back Brighton to reach a semi-final at this stage, like, which would be unbelievable stuff. And yeah, Evan Ferguson's a massive part of that. You have to say, like, what he's done is so good. I think you're always worried with these young players, will the hype kind of kill them or whatever, but I feel like Evan Ferguson's the kind of player who's, like, just from kind of how he's gone on recently, he hasn't just had a game or two games where he's been unbelievable and then kind of fallen off. Like, he's having a consistent performance. Like, even when he's not getting goals or assists, it's about kind of what he brings to the team in those games as well, where his hold of play is really good. He's so good in the air. He's causing problems for defenders. Like, I think he's someone to really look out for. Obviously, as everyone knows, he's someone everyone's been looking at. And obviously that leads to, then you see a lot of rumours that England are going to try and get Evan Ferguson, but I don't think he's gonna take that. I think he's gonna stick firmly with Ireland. But yeah, he's someone I'm really excited about, for sure.
Yeah, I just think with Ferguson, I just think it's just let him play his game, just let him develop at Brighton. I wouldn't like to see him move anywhere at this moment in time. I'd rather see him just develop there. Everybody's talking about him. I even see Mark Goldbridge was comparing him to Alan Shearer. He's saying he's a modern day Alan Shearer, which is a huge compliment, and he was saying that United should go out and get him. Now, I'm not saying he's a football expert, but it's funny when you see these people talking about him, whereas kind of in the past we've been probably guilty of hyping these Irish players up and hyping these Irish strikers up, but now we're actually seeing the English media actually hyping them up as well. Just going to brighten my light up there. I didn't realise I didn't have it on. But yeah, I just think with Ferguson, it's now, like you just mentioned about his hold-up play and stuff like that. He played in a 4-0 win against West Ham yesterday, and I think people saw that, so he was able to mix it up. Maybe if he's not playing his part in scoring goals, he's definitely playing his part in the build-up play for goals, and I think that would be huge for Ireland if he can come in and play his part. You know, we've often been lacking that focal point in the middle, up front, where someone who could take it in, hold it in, and give it off, and also be quick enough with his feet to be able to bring others into play and make things happen. I think we've been guilty over a number of years of not really having anyone since Robbie Keane to try do that. Like, we've obviously wanted players. I think Adam Ida's the closest we've had to someone who's been a focal point just because of his sheer size, but I don't think anyone's ever really and it's not. I don't think it's Adam's fault. I think he's suffered a lot just through injuries and stuff like that. That I think he hasn't developed probably as much as he wanted to. And then when he is actually getting a bit of a good run last year with Norwich, then he got injured. So he's still kind of feeling the effects of that at the moment. But I do think Evan, if you're looking at a striker, I think he's our best option at the moment. And again, we must look at, you know, that midfield option as well, that kind of number 10 area. And Smodix, he's scoring the last couple of weeks. He scored a huge goal against Leicester to, you know, get them into the next round, Blackburn that is. And you know, he'll be knocking on the door to Stephen Kenny, being saying, like, you know, I deserve a call up, and so will players like Will Smallbone and possibly Mark Sykes as well, who's had a good season to date so far in terms of adding goals to their game. A lot of really good players, and a lot of people adding goals and assists to their names coming up to the international window, which is in a week or two away, and the squad announcement, I'd say, will be at some point next week. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see who kind of gets called up. But what are your thoughts on Smodix, and I suppose Smallbone as well? We might as well talk about him while we're here, because he got 3 assists yesterday.
Yeah, well, firstly with Smodix, I think he's someone who's really interesting. You know, he's kind of plays in that number 10 role for Blackburn. He plays pretty much every game. I think he's got 4 goals this season in the Championship. He's 27 now as well, so he's kind of at that point now where he is kind of in the prime of his career. Obviously he's a player who's, like, you know, really creative and stuff like that, and he's been called up for squads before, but it'd be interesting to see how he actually cope, like, at the level of a senior international Ireland, if he'd make a difference, because obviously we've got, like, numerous other players in that position. Like, Smallbone is also someone you consider. He's probably more of an 8 than a 10, really, but he's played there, kind of played in the 10 for Ireland under 21s when I've seen him live in the flesh a few times. And yeah, it's great to see him, like, you know, really prospering, because I think it would have been probably difficult at Southampton this season, just with, you know, like, I think when you're in a relegation battle, you're always going to stick with, you know, experience. So someone of his age maybe wouldn't be getting as much games. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to see how he gets on. Hopefully, I think Smallbone gets in the squad this time. I know he was in the squad for the last games against Norway, I remember, as well, in the friendly, and people were kind of giving out that he didn't get on in either game, so they're kind of saying, what's the point in bringing him? But I don't think that's the case, really. Obviously, I would have liked to see him, but I think it's really important for players like Smallbone to kind of get in the squad and just experience what the setup is like, in terms of, you know, like, being with the, like, lads in the squad, and just to kind of being more comfortable in that experience. And if he goes into that environment now again, he'll feel more comfortable with it all. And he's someone I've always really rated since I've watched him, especially with the 21s. That's probably where I've watched him more than at club level. But yeah, to get 3 assists in a game, like, that's so impressive, and he's really doing well with Stoke this season. So yeah, no, I'm really hope to see him in this squad now coming up.
Yeah, I think what's good about Smallbone is he's obviously working with John O'Shea, who's recently been announced as the new assistant coach to Stephen Kenny as well. So he's obviously coaching him day in, day out at Stoke as well, which will be good. And I think that will actually help him. And I think it'll actually help him within the squad. He was obviously in the last squad in and around the camp, so he kind of has a feel for it already. But I think that will definitely help him. And yeah, it's good to see him flying. You mentioned Southampton there. You know, they bounced back, I suppose, from that defeat against Grimsby during the week. As I mentioned, Gavin Houlihan getting the 2 penalties. And yeah, Gavin Bazunu was back in goals for Southampton at the weekend. Clean sheet and a win against Leicester. So yeah, it's been a good week for, well, not in the FA Cup, but he wasn't playing. But in terms of Bazunu in the Premier League, a massive result for them, considering how results went over the weekend as well, from the relegation point of view.
Yeah, well, like what you were saying there, like, they've gone off the bottom for the first time in what seems like ages. Feels like they've been there all season, really. Leeds are in 17th on 22 points, and then Southampton are 19th on 21. So it is very tight down there. But I'd say it probably didn't have as much of an effect on Bazunu, as obviously he wasn't playing in that game against Grimsby. But for the club in general, that's a really tough one to take. Like, I know Grimsby have been kind of the underdog of the FA Cup this year, and they've knocked out, I think, 5 teams now that are in leagues above them. So I think they knocked out a few League One teams, Championship team, and now they've knocked out Southampton as well. But yeah, that's tough to take on the club. Like, when they're already in such a bad period of time, I'm sure at the moment the FA Cup, winning the FA Cup was not high on their priority list. It's all about staying up, but not really, it's just probably something they don't need right now, like in a defeat like that. But yeah, in terms of Bazunu, he was obviously really good in this game. I saw some of the highlights. He made some good saves. Clean sheet is always massive, especially when you're Southampton and you're fighting for your life down at the bottom. Like, having a solid defence and keeper, which is what they have, is massive. Like I said to you a few weeks ago when I was at that Chelsea-Southampton game, I was sitting right behind the goal for the second half where Bazunu was. I was just so impressed at his kind of leadership, his organisation, his communication. And sure, he talked about it with you in that interview you did with him last year about kind of how he, even at the age of 19, 20 in an international setup, is, screaming at lads who are 30, organising them when he's, only a teenager. Like, he's just got that in him, I think. I don't. That's kind of the thing. I think you're probably born with that, really. He's a player that really impresses me, and I hope they do stay up for his sake, because he's a player I really admire, and I've really admired him since he came on the scene a few years ago. He's played a serious amount of games. He's played over 100 league games, and he only turned 21 there the other week. So yeah, he's someone I think he'll. I know we've got the likes of Kelleher and Travers, but I do see Bazunu being that long-term kind of goalkeeper for us for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, well, I think he's the best of the three. It'll be interesting to see if Kelleher does go out and does he develop. But I don't think Bazunu's in any danger of being stuck with Southampton down in the Championship if they do go down. And look, it's a long season ahead. Like, I still think Everton are very, very much in the danger zone there, and they can't be probably too happy with that draw today. But look, another team who were struggling down the end of the table were Wolves, and they got a really big win over Spurs yesterday. Nathan Collins came on the 46th minute, and he reclaimed his place, I suppose. Lopetegui said after the game, fair play to him, because he was ready when he was called upon, and a couple of other players, like João Moutinho and another big player that they have, I can't remember who it is now, but basically he said, like, he had praised them for basically biding his time, and as I said before a couple of weeks ago, there'll be a moment where he has to come in and he has to reclaim his place, and it was a great goal by Adama Traore, and they beat Spurs, which is a massive result, and it's a massive 3 points for them to kind of shoot up the league a little bit.
Yeah, I saw those quotes from a manager with the pedigree of Lopetegui. Any praise like that is unbelievable. I was a bit kind of devastated for Collins. Well, not devastated, it's probably too harsh of a word, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, I was a bit upset for him that he's, gone in there, big money move to, like, a really solid kind of Premier League team. And they'd sold, obviously, Cody to Everton. They'd gone from a back five to a back four, basically accommodating him instead of Cody. And I was like, that is such a massive statement from a club of that size to make, to actually put, 20 odd million into this centre back, Nathan Collins, to replace the club's captain. Who's been there for years. I was like, that is massive. So then to see him, to see Dawson come in then after I felt like he had a really good start, first kind of half season in the Premier League, to see Dawson come in then, it was a bit deflating as an Irish fan, and I'm sure Nathan Collins himself felt pretty deflated. But yeah, to hear that from the manager, that's really impressive, and it's great to hear that, because it shows that he's not kind of a sulker. There's some players like that would have had such a great start and kind of be on a high, and then they'd get one kind of bit of kind of difficulty like that, and then they'd sulk or be upset. But clearly, from what the manager said, he's been obviously training really hard. He hasn't let his standards drop, and he's just been waiting in the wings. And yeah, as you said, you've been saying for a few weeks that there wouldn't be too much to worry about, because there'll be injuries, there'll be lots of games. So it's just nice to see him getting that opportunity. And hopefully get to see him start more now, because the last few weeks has probably been difficult for him, but he's kind of kept his head, and he's obviously shown himself to be a top professional in those few weeks, and hopefully he can build on that from here. And for me, he's still probably our best centre back. I know he hasn't been playing as much, but like, he's proven over the last kind of few years with Stoke and then with Burnley last season, and now with Wolves too, that he's a top centre back in the Premier League. I've always said I think he can get to any level he wants, really. So I'm hoping to see him kick on now. Hopefully start playing a bit more consistently.
Yeah, I think I never really had any worries about him at all. I said it previously. I think he just needs that one chance to come in and prove himself to the manager once again. I think maybe it's just the fact with Dawson, he's been in relegation dogfights in the past, and I think that's probably why he was like, all right, this guy's the perfect person to get in. Now, in fairness, Dawson, when he went to West Ham, he transformed West Ham as well. He was brilliant for West Ham, so we can understand why he came in and took his place, even if it's just for a while. Be interested to see now in the next game whether he starts or not. Now, I just saw earlier on there, Kenny's kids had actually tweeted that Joe Hodge had started for the under-21s of the Wolves squad, so he seems to have just dropped down completely under Lopetegui. And in fairness to Mark O'Mahony, he actually scored in that game for the second Brighton under-21 goal, so fair play to him. He's gone over from Cork City, and he's hit the ground running for the academy side, so that's great to see. I think that's it in terms of the Premier League. We touched on Evan Ferguson, and he won 4-0. Well, not him personally, but Brighton won 4-0, and he played 83 minutes. It's good to see him building up the minutes as well, because he's still not playing 90 minutes, but it's close. It's as close to 90 minutes as you're going to see. Compared to the last number of games he's been kind of playing, is 60 minutes here and there, so it's good to see him getting I suppose just closer to that 90. Be interested to see if he starts 90s coming up to the international break, because then Stephen Kenny will have something to think about. Can I play him for the full 90? Can he be trusted for the full 90? Same with Obafemi as well. If he's going to opt to play him, I imagine he will, but good to see, I suppose, Evan getting more minutes and being trusted for longer periods of games.
Yeah, exactly. He's honestly, he has to be starting for me in both the Latvia game and the France game. He played obviously a few minutes against Norway in the last international break, kind of just before the World Cup in November. But we've been saying for a few weeks now, Obafemi and Ferguson, they're two great options to have. I have to say realistically that I think Ferguson should be the starting striker. If you're playing two, then you'd put Obafemi up there too. We've obviously got a few good options, like we've still got Ogbene there. I know he's kind of a winger as well, but we've got a good few forwards. But Ferguson's definitely the first name in the team sheet for me.
Yeah, I think he has to be. Just I just saw there as well, just on Kenny's kids. Nathan Collins, when he came on, he was a half-time sub for Mario Lemina, but he did make 3 blocks and 1 clearance and completed 82% of his passes, so excellent stuff from him, and obviously he's bouncing back. Seamus Coleman, we didn't really speak about. He played 2-2 today for Everton, and it was 2-2 between Everton and Forest away from home. It looked like Everton probably going to win it. He probably should have had a penalty, in my opinion. Maybe I'm biased, but it did look like he did get clipped in the box, and should have had a penalty, but it wasn't given, unfortunately. Still seems to be scrapping with absolutely everybody every single week. But it's a point on the board. I think it's a point more than he would have got under Lampard. Sean Dyche has come out and said, though, he is carrying a knee injury at the moment, so that is a bit worrying that he's still playing full 90 minutes on that knee injury. And with an international window coming up, it'll be interesting to kind of see if he will be brought to the camp. I imagine he will, but I would imagine he sits out the Latvia game, probably plays against France, and then sits out the Gibraltar game. That's probably how I foresee it. But Seamus Coleman, ever reliable, didn't have a bad game, was solid enough, won his tackles, and as I said, he just was getting in fights. But he was getting up and down the pitch. But the knee injury, I imagine it's not much, but it's something obviously to keep an eye on coming into the international break, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, Coleman's obviously one of the best players and also one of the most senior players in that side. He's been the captain for so many years, in Everton and Ireland, but I'm just talking about Ireland. I do think that you're going to always take someone like that in a squad, no matter even if they're, carrying a bit of a knock. But I'd be worried in terms of, we always talk about, this is the Ireland's strongest 11 or whatever. But then by the time you get to the actual camp, because we've been talking about this for so many weeks now, it actually ends up like there's a few injuries, and the team you put out is not even really that similar to the team you're kind of thinking is going to be out. And I would be worried about that now in the next kind of few games before the international window. Will Coleman just play a game too much for Everton? And listen, I completely understand. I'm sure you're the same with Dyche. When you're in that kind of situation, you're in a relegation dogfight, you want your best players and your most experienced players and leaders on the pitch. And he's clearly one of them for Everton. Sure, you see the video with Frank Lampard from last year. Like, he's so highly rated and so well respected in that Everton dressing room. But I am just worried from an Irish perspective, as someone who doesn't have Everton interests. I hope he doesn't get just kind of that little niggle kind of turns into a knock then, and then he's out for Ireland, because he's obviously one of our main players. And when you're looking at the likes of Mbappe or whoever's going to be playing on the left for France, like, they've got serious options in that position. Like, you've got Mbappe, Coleman, Dembele, and so many more. You do want Seamus Coleman starting that game, 100% for me. What would be your thoughts on it? Obviously, you want Everton to be playing well, but you also have your Irish interests as well. So what would you think about it in terms of Coleman playing for Everton in the next few weeks?
I think he'd be okay, because Patterson is nearly back to full fitness. He played for the under-21s, I think, today or yesterday. So I think he played a good number of minutes in that as well. So I think he'll be back, and if he comes back, I think Coleman will be rested and give him probably the rest he needs coming into the international break, and then I think he'll be fine. But I'd like to see him still be playing coming up to the international break, because he looks really sharp at the moment. He looks, he's getting up the pitch and he's good on the ball. He's making good tackles. He looks like he can cope with most players in the Premier League defensively as well. So that's what we want. We're going to be backs to the wall against France. I think most teams will struggle against France anyway. So to have our best defenders playing, we've got Collins back playing now. Hopefully he'll get a run in his side. We've got Darragh O'Shea playing week in, week out at West Brom, captain in the club. He's played every minute of the season so far. John Egan, captain in Sheffield United, doing really well as well in the Championship. And it's just Omar Bamidele's not really getting much game time at the moment, but I think a lot of our defenders are starting to get a lot of game time in there. Be interested to see at a left wing back capacity what he's going to go with there. Is it McLean? Is it Manning? Is it Robbie Brady? Is it Callum O'Dowda? So he's got a few options there. So it will be an interesting kind of couple of weeks now coming up to it. Could be injuries, hopefully not. Suspensions won't matter in terms of the league or anything like that. So it'll just be injuries coming up now in the next couple of weeks, and that'll be the worry, is like keeping players like Coleman wrapped in cotton wool just because you need him for the experience in the squad alone. Just having him around is massive. Also, actually, I think it was someone had put out earlier about Stephen Kenny had spoken about Shane Duffy not playing at Fulham, and he's not guaranteed his place. I actually think that's good news, not for Shane Duffy. Obviously on a personal sense it's not good for him, but I think it's good that Kenny has kind of set a marker that if you're not playing at your club, that you're not guaranteed your place at international level. I think that shows that he's going to go with kind of form over trust a little bit, and I think some managers in the past were probably guilty of that, like Mick McCarthy or stuff like that. So I think to have he's basically just setting a marker there for Shane Duffy, and I don't think it's anything personal or anything like that. I think Shane Duffy would say himself, you need to be playing to be considered. He had a good game there in the cup. I think it was against Sunderland, but he hasn't really got a look in this season in the Premier League at all, and I think he needs to be playing. Now he could come in, like if he does get picked into the squad, I think it'll be, he'll get a game against Lafayette and he could be considered then, because he'd have 90 under his belt. But I just think with the emergence of players like Luke McNally, who got another clean sheet yesterday for Coventry, he's been absolutely excellent since he's gone there. There is one spot I think in that defence that's not been covered yet. So it could be Omar Bamidele, or it could be Darragh Lenihan, it could be Duffy, McNally, but I think Egan and O'Shea are nailed on, and then it'll depend on Nathan Collins whether he's starting games or not. But I still think Nathan Collins should start. But yeah, it's good to have the options, and it's good to actually have players that we know. Look, if we're struggling, that we can have players there that can come in and be very good. And I'd love to see someone like McNally get a call up. And I suppose we'll move on to the Championship anyway. While we're on the subject, and players, I suppose there's no real goals in the Championship from yesterday. Dave McGoldrick got a goal in a 2-2 draw with Shrewsbury. Dan Manjero got a penalty in a 1-0 win over Oxford for Lincoln, and Harry Charlesley got a goal as well in the game between Salford and Newport. That was in League 2. Just in terms of assists then, we have Chiedozie Ogbene got an assist for Rotherham in a 3-1 win at home to QPR. Wills Balbo got 3 assists. We spoke about that already. James McLean got an assist for Wigan in a 1-1 draw against Birmingham City. Corey O'Keefe got a assist as well in the 2-1 win for Accrington Stanley there. Then Conor Howard got an assist, and so did Jason Knight in the 2-2 draw for Derby against Shrewsbury. And then Alex Pearce got a assist, and so did Stephen Quinn for between the game between Mansfield and AFC Wimbledon. And Kieran Sadler got a assist as well for Leyton Orient in a 1-1 draw against Swindon Town. And then that's really it in terms of the Championship in League One. Not many goals, but it's still nice to see players like Ogbene, who's on the score sheet last week, and then got an assist today, so he's coming into a good bit of form coming into the international break, which is what we want. We want our attackers coming in good form, other than just I suppose Obafemi and Ferguson, because I think people are kind of forgetting players like Troy Parrott and Ogbene, so I think it's good to see them back. Well, not Troy so much, but it's good to see Ogbene back in form coming into the international break.
Yeah, it's great to see Ogbene back playing and back in form, because he's been one of our best players over the last kind of year, 18 months, since he's kind of broken into the team, into the squad. He's such an impressive player. Like, I think technically I think people look at him, at him playing as a winger and as a wing back, and they just think of his pace and his kind of athleticism, but I think technically he's actually such a great player. Like, he's got his feet are really good. I think he's a good finisher when he gets a chance, especially because he plays probably more of a forward role for Ireland than he does at club level. So
he does now at club level, but he originally was kind of on out wide, but now he does play kind of that more forward position centrally.
Yeah. Sometimes he was playing on the wing or even at wing back, but now he's playing exactly more forward or centrally, which is good because that's where he's been playing for Ireland, and I always feel like he's done really well there. Like, you think back to the bicycle kick, I think it was Belgium, that we played, that was unbelievable. Like, there's not many players that could have that in their locker. So yeah, he's someone that'll definitely be in the squad 100%. Like, he'll be pushing for a start as well, I suppose, with Ferguson and Obafemi. They're, especially Ferguson obviously, but Obafemi too. He kind of didn't have the greatest start with Swansea, but since he's gone to Burn, scored a few goals, and obviously with a team that's top of the Championship doing so well, I do think he'll probably find it hard to get a place in the starting 11, but definitely one of the first names off the bench for me if he's not starting.
Yeah, well, I think it's, as I say, it's just good to have. If he goes with a 3-5-2, I think he definitely has to be considered. But I will move it on to the SPFL. I don't think David McGoldrick's going to be coming back to the international setup, so we won't go into too much detail, but he's flying for Derby County, so fair play to him. We touched on him last week. Conor Howard's doing well in terms of assists as well this season, and good to see Jason Knight back among the assists as well. Hopefully he'll get a move somewhere in the summer, but I think Jason Knight will definitely be considered in that midfield for Ireland against France and for the Latvia and just for the international break. But let's move on to the SPFL. I believe you're covering the SPFL.
Yeah, so the main thing really was Jamie McGrath scored a penalty for Dundee, despite they did lose 3-1 to Aberdeen. But it's great to see him scoring, and we've been talking about him a good bit recently, so it's nice to see that he's kind of getting back into the team and getting back to playing a lot more.
Just on McGrath, obviously when he had his really good season at St Mirren, Jim Goodwin was his manager, and during the week Jim Goodwin was announced as the Dundee United manager, so now he's back working with him, so hopefully he can get a bit of a spark out of him. And again, he could be, if he has a couple more goals coming into a couple of weeks, he again could be in the squad. I mean, when he's come in previously, he hadn't let the team down. He looked very, very comfortable at that level. I often go back to that Portugal game where he assisted John Egan with the corner, and he didn't look out of place at all there. And he could definitely be someone, and if Jim Goodwin can get the best out of him, and hopefully that they can both form a good partnership again, and it works out well for both. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to kind of add that in.
No, that was a good bit of insight there. But yeah, no, he was someone I've always rated as well for Ireland. But yeah, then also today in St Mirren's 5-1 loss to Celtic, Charles Dunn, centre back, got sent off for a pretty. It was a pretty blatant red, to be fair. He played a kind of short back pass, realised it wasn't going to reach the keeper, and then Furuhashi, the Celtic forward, was running through, and he just dragged him down. It was definitely a red card. He was last man. The annoying thing for Charles Dunn obviously was that St Mirren were actually 1-0 up at the time, and then in the second half conceded 5 unanswered goals. Then Darragh O'Connor for Ayr in the Scottish Championship got an assist and got sent off in the same game. He got 2 yellow cards. They lost 2-1 to Inverness that game. Then I suppose moving on to the rest of the world, then Matt Doherty, we've been talking about him so much in recent weeks that he hasn't played. He finally made his debut this weekend. He was subbed on at the 78th minute in Atletico's 6-1 win versus Sevilla. I was a bit disappointed not to see him start the game, to be fair, because Marcus Llorente started there, but anyway, at least he made his debut. Then Festy Ebosele for Udinese made his first start, another player we've been talking about a lot recently. He played 78 minutes and he got booked as Udinese drew 0-0. And then James Abanka also didn't play again in this game, so probably a little bit worrying for him that he's still not really getting a game at all. The newly declared Irish player, Mikey Johnson, also came on for Vitória de Guimarães in this Portuguese Premier Liga in their 3-1 win versus Santa Clara. So it's nice to see him getting games. He's someone that I think a lot of Irish fans, especially people who've been following Celtic, would be excited about. Then in the MLS, there was a few small stories. Conor Ronan got man of the match for Colorado in the 0-0 draw versus Kansas. It's nice to see him doing well, considering he's, a lot of people kind of questioned his move leaving Wolves, but he's gone there and he's obviously doing well if he's getting a man of the match. And then John Gallagher got an assist for Austin FC as they beat Montreal 1-0. So, Paul, obviously the main story there really is the things about Doherty and about Ebosele. What are your thoughts on the two of
them? Well, I suppose just Doherty, the 12 minutes I think they were 5-1 up at that stage. Kind of worries me, but that he still doesn't trust him. That would worry me quite a bit. I think, it's. I was so happy when he joined Atletico Madrid. I was like, oh, brilliant! An Irish player joining a really big club in Europe. Brilliant manager, and he might improve him, whether it's technically or defensively or anything like that, or even just might get a tune out of him because he wasn't doing terrible at Spurs, but he wasn't hitting the levels he was at Wolves, as someone said in the comments earlier on there. Just going to read out his name there. He says, Dan plays. He says, Doherty is good. Didn't get a chance really at Spurs. Wolves was a great club for him. Should have stayed there. But I don't think he should have stayed there. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of ambition and trying to move and better yourself by playing for a better club. And traditionally, Spurs have been a better club than Wolves over time. And I think just with Doherty, I think he was an automatic starter before he left for Atletico. And that, you wouldn't have said that anybody would have started him, including Seamus Coleman. But such is the way football works, is that Seamus Coleman, for me, right now, is ahead of him in the pecking order. I know some people are going to say there's an Everton bias there. It's not. It's a recent game playing bias. He hasn't been playing. 12 minutes is not enough. If he can improve on that over the next couple of weeks, then for me, Doherty is back number one, 100%. But I do think there's players there that are starting to emerge. There's, as you said, Festy Ebosele's first start in Serie A for Udinese. if he can continue a little run now over the next 2 weeks, he could potentially be the player that comes in there, and he could be potentially the player who has to come in and deal with Mbappe. I don't admire him if he is the one that has to do that, but if he is, he has the pace to keep up with him. That could be something that Stephen Kenny's maybe thinking of. Then you've got Dan McNamara doing well at Millwall most weeks as well. The Millwall fans are raving about him. They're commenting on our Irish Abroad posts every week saying Dan McNamara has been brilliant. He deserves a call up. He's, came forward a few times and said he'd love to be called up. I did an interview with him at the back of last season. Said he'd love to be called up. Probably should have been called up back then. So there's options there again, as I keep saying. You've got Mark Sykes who could play there too, and Seamus Coleman. If Seamus Coleman keeps going the way he's going, I think he could start. But look, I want Doherty to do well at Atletico. I want Doherty to start getting more games. I want him to be a success at the Atletico Madrid, and I want him to get a new contract there at the end of the season. So I really want him now to push on. He's came on, he's got his debut out of the way. We were all anticipating his debut. He got that out of the way. He's done it now. Well done to him. So let's kick on from here, Matt, if you can. Not that he's listening. But anyway, Festy Ebosele, I think, again, does the manager really trust him? I don't know in terms of the Udinese manager. I haven't watched him at Udinese once, so I can't sit here and go, he's been good, he's been bad. All I know is that he's getting chances. He's getting more chances than James Abankwah. But I think it's good for Abankwah to be kind of there and experiencing things in Serie A. But I would like to see him, if he's not going to be played, maybe next season go out on loan. As I say, if he's just not going to be played. But if he's going to be played, great. And then, in terms of Mikey Johnson, a bit of a mixed reaction, really, to him getting the call-up with the Ireland squad. Or not the call-up, sorry, the switch, international clearance and stuff like that. He switched basically to play for Ireland, as we all know by now. But yeah, I think with him, I've seen him play before for Celtic. I thought he was outstanding, but that was 3 or 4 years ago now. If he can reach those heights again, really exciting, fast, tricky winger, can score goals. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Aidan McGeady. And yes, Celtic fans were very mixed about him. Some were saying he's brilliant, some were saying he's lacking form, some were saying he's lacking confidence. He's obviously over in Portugal. I haven't seen him since a few years now to see what kind of level he's at, but Stephen Kenny seems to rate him. He says he has attributes that our other wingers don't have in terms of being able to take players on and stuff like that. So look, if Stephen Kenny feels as though he's good enough to get him in the squad, I don't see what the problem is. Or if he's good enough and he wants to play for Ireland, I don't see what the problem is. So I think he's better than anyone we have in the squad right now, or deserving more of a place than anyone? No, not really. So I don't think he should be called up. But like, football's very, very funny like that. Like, don't forget, there was people questioning Ogbene being called up and switching allegiances originally. They were like, what? And he came in, he's been brilliant. He scored goals. He's been one of our better players, one of Stephen Kenny's better players, definitely. And I wouldn't say like his results would reflect that, but in terms of players who have really made an impact, I suppose made a connection with the fans. You'd probably say Ogbene and Obafemi have probably really connected well with the fans over the last number of years. And I think if Mikey Johnson comes in and he has one good performance for Ireland, that all changes that narrative of, oh, he's terrible, he's this, he's that. That all changes with one game, one good game, a goal. That all changes. Or he could come in and he could just create that little spark, and maybe he creates a goal, and all of a sudden he's not shit anymore. He's actually a good player, because football fans are very, very fickle, as we all know. And I think that's the way it will go. Rant over.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I've talked to some of my mates who be big Celtic fans, and they said, as the same as what you said, some of them said, oh, I didn't really rate him, and some of them were saying, he's a top player. I'm really glad he declared for us. I can't say I've watched too much of him over the years, but from what I've heard, that he's meant to be an unbelievably gifted kind of winger in terms of his pace, his feet, his trickery. So that's something we kind of are lacking. We don't have any real kind of out and out pacey kind of tricky wingers, like I suppose someone like Aidan McGeady or something like that, who can kind of beat a man. I know you have James McLean, but he's not really playing in that same role anymore. He's not really that player anymore. So yeah, he's someone hopefully if we do see him at some stage, he'll do well. And as you said, you know, a lot of the time fans can be fickle. You know, like people are questioning him, but as you said, if he comes in, has a good game, scores a goal, things are completely different. But yeah, in terms of Doherty, I agree with you in terms of like when he joined Atletico Madrid, I was so happy because it's not often you see an Irish player, you know, going to Spain or especially a club like Atletico Madrid. So I do think it was probably a bit more worrying the fact that this was the game he made his debut in, but Nahuel Molina, the right back, we said, you know, he won the World Cup with Argentina. You can understand why he's not in the team instead of him, but now that I don't know if he was injured or suspended, but he was unavailable. And then they play in a back five. They put the Marcus Llorente, the centre mid, at right back. And I know he's played right back before, and he's by all accounts a good right back. But you just think, you know, that's Doherty's kind of number one best position is playing as a wing back, right wing back in a back five. And the fact that he wasn't played there over someone who's not a natural right wing back, it kind of does worry you because you know, does Simeone have that real trust for Doherty? As you said, they're only bringing him on after it's 5-1, you know, with 12 minutes to go. Is that the kind of thing where you think, is he really trusted, you know? But then I suppose people would have said the same thing about Trippier, for instance, when he went to Atletico. That's someone I kind of cited before when talking about how I hoped, you know, Doherty's move would go. That, you know, he went there and he had this reputation of being a kind of dodgy defensive fullback. Not that I think Doherty has that reputation, but that, you know, he really, really is solid now. And you see him for Newcastle, he's doing unbelievable. Yeah, like, and regarding the comment also, like about they shouldn't have left Wolves. I think it's easy to say that now in hindsight because he was such a top player for Wolves and he was really, really doing well. But I remember I think it was in the 2020 summer. You know, Spurs had Jose Mourinho. They're signing for 15 million, excuse me, which is obviously a lot of money, especially during the COVID window. And then, you know, you're playing under a manager like that in a new stadium. You know, they were really on the up. They'd only reached the Champions League final the year before that. So I think people would have criticised Doherty probably if he hadn't gone then for a lack of ambition. I think going to Spurs was the right move. Obviously, he didn't work out. There's nothing you can do about that. He's moved on to Atletico. I hope he goes on and does really well. But it doesn't look like Simeone trusts him at the moment. And then just lastly, just to touch on Ebosele, I do think he's someone that he's obviously been a top player. Like in the last few years with Derby, he's done so well. He's getting minutes in Serie A, which you have to say is so impressive at that age, and he's starting a game now. Hopefully, he just builds on this from here because I think I said last week that he's had a number of appearances, but none of them have been longer than I think 18 minutes, and most of them were kind of 6, 7, a few 12 minutes around there. They weren't long appearances, so hopefully he kind of kicks on from now and starts. So yeah, hopefully that's what happens. But
yeah. I think we're pretty much in agreement with most things there. And I think that's really it for this week's episode of The Irish Abroad. Let us know if there's anything we missed. Let us know firstly, and anything we discussed. Make sure to get your comments in and give your opinion. And let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts, please give us a follow on that, a 5-star review, all that jazz. You know, just keep those positive vibes, yeah? Thanks very much for listening. We'll speak to you all soon, and take care of yourselves.
Thank you.